All right, so you should have already finished your ionic compound formulas. The next thing on the agenda is, of course, this video, followed by number 2, the DIY ionic compound nomenclature. Nomenclature is just a fancy way of saying naming. So we've been working with how to form the ionic compounds, how the cations and anions come together, and now we're going to talk about how we name them. But it's going to be a DIY. And the way this DIY works, well, DIY with your team, is you're going to work with your team to determine the rules for naming certain ionic compounds. So on each of your tables, there's a sheet that looks like this. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, and Level 4 are on the back. I've provided the different formulas for compounds as well as the correct name for that compound. So what your task is to figure out how did they go from formula to name and from name to formula. So what you have to do is go through all 6 of these to make sure whatever pattern or whatever rule you discover is true for all 6 of these. Once you think you understand that pattern or rule, the third thing on your agenda is ionic compound nomenclature practice, and it's a link. And the instructions are written there, but I'm also going to just tell you exactly what to do, because yesterday the students had a hard time understanding that I wanted them to figure out first before they practice, and they went straight to practice and then had no idea what they were doing. So when you click on that link for practice, it takes you to this page. So once you figure out level 1, you go to that page and you click on level 1. There's a bunch of compounds here. Now these compounds are buttons. So what your task is to look at this and say, okay, LiCl, I'm giving you a chemical formula. You have to figure out, based on the patterns and rules that you've determined from this page, figure out what is the name of LiCl. And vice versa. I give you the name lithium oxide. You need to figure out what is the chemical formula for lithium oxide. Okay? When you click on the buttons, it will show you the answer. Once you finish level 1, and when I say finished, I would like you to get at least 3 of the formula to name and 3 of the name to formula correct before you move on to level 2. When you get those correct, so a total of 6 correct, then, and only then, you'll go to level 2. Level 2 is a little bit more difficult. It's dealing with polyatomics. Now, if you remember, a polyatomic, poly means more than one atom, and they're an ion. For example, NH4, notice I put it in parentheses. NH4 has a positive charge. That means this, all of this together has a positive charge, which if you remember, to get a positive charge, you've lost an electron. And I put it in parentheses so that I remember that this has to stay together. This is what ammonium is. Okay, you should have gotten a page that has a list of polyatomic ions. Okay, and so you'll see that ammonium, NH4+, is the only polyatomic cation. So you'll go through this and you'll try to do the same thing. Figure out, well, LiClO3, that's lithium chloride. How did they get from one to the other? So you'll need to be able to go back and forth, back and forth. Go through all 6 of these, because if you notice, some have parentheses, some don't. Okay, and then you'll go back to this one, level 2, same idea. There's practice problems there. Click on the button, it'll show you the answer. Get at least 6 correct. 3 from formula to name and 3 from name to formula. Level 4, and by 4 I mean 3, is working with the transition metals. So really pay attention here. Just remember they are all ionic compounds, which means electrons are being transferred. Level 4 is transition metals with polyatomics. Same idea. Go through all of them. Figure it out. How do we get from formula to name? How do we get from name to formula? Back and forth. And then go ahead and do some practice problems. Same with level 4. All right, work with your team, stay with your team. Feel free to use the whiteboards. Just make sure you put them back, put the markers back, put the socks or erasers back, clean up after yourselves. Remember the norms, remember the expectations, and have a great weekend. I'll see you guys next week. If you have any questions, feel free to message me.